Hey, welcome back, everybody. You've made it as far as chapter 3 in HTML and CSS for future programmers. I'm Jeremy Schaefer from Temple University, and let's get started. Now, before I go any further, I want to share with you my response to a question that I get asked from time to time. And anybody who works with technology or who teaches technology gets asked this question fairly frequently. And the question is, how do you keep up to date? How do you keep up to date with your technology career, with your technology literacy, when the field of technology and information sciences and information management and systems management, it's constantly evolving, constantly changing? How do you keep up? My answer to that question is to have a strategy for keeping up. And of course, that strategy would include, following different news feeds and different YouTube channels and um, listening to questions that people are asking on open forums. But really, all of that is secondary to the advice I'm about to share with you. First, especially if you're brand new to technology, you need to figure out what the underlying components are. And notice I say figure out what the free and open underlying components are. Because if they're free and if they're open, then you're going to have a lot of people use them over time. And that means they're going to be probably more widely accepted than proprietary solutions. So figure out what the underlying components are, understand who governs those components, and learn how to mix and match. So earlier in this series of lessons, I pointed you towards the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C, and also the Mozilla Developer Network out on developer.mozilla.org. Those are two uh, nonprofit organizations, so they don't have any vested interest in selling one kind of ware or another, and yet they define a lot of how the internet works and operates. So whatever the new technology is, chances are good it stands on the shoulders of some prior technology or is a rebranding or a reassembly of some existing technology. Once you recognize that and you can sleuth out what the underpinnings are, keeping up gets a whole lot easier. All right, let's move on to the lesson. In chapter 3, I want to spend a little bit of time setting up your first IDE, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. As before, I'll have to have some instructions that are oriented towards Mac users and another set of instructions oriented towards PC users. Shouldn't take too long. It's a pretty simple install. Then the body of lesson 3 or chapter 3 is to introduce you to a lot more tags. We introduced you to several of the most basic fundamental tags in the last chapter. Now we're going to add to that knowledge. Don't worry though, we're not going to learn all the HTML tags. There are over 100 HTML tags, and you don't need to know them all. So we'll learn some more tags, and then we'll conclude the chapter with some review questions. That's the plan. So setting up your first IDE environment. So your IDE is an integrated development environment. Remember in chapter 2 when we used Notepad or TextEdit to edit some HTML files? Wasn't that really awkward? Wasn't that really difficult? Wouldn't it be great if there was some sort of software that was written to edit text files, but with a programmer in mind? Well, that would be an IDE, right? And hot tip for all of you technologists out there who hope to make a career out of this sort of thing. Back when I was a hiring manager, one of my interview questions would be, hey, what's your favorite IDE? And I always knew I had an interesting character on my hands when the job applicant would say, what's an IDE, right? That was always a very disappointing response. So an IDE is a text editor that is written for programmers to help programmers write better code. And IDE is short for Integrated Development Environment. All right, enough about that. I'm going to move on here into some instructions tailored to first Mac users and then PC users.